Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled Karen neighbor is totally out of control, made my life hell, and finally got into a bulldozer to run over my mailbox. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the story. This story is not recent by any means. To put it into context, all this happened before Karen was even a thing. But since I now know what to call people like these, I thought why not share my experience. When I first moved into my new home, I was excited to finally have a place of my own. My parents moved here in the 90s, but I lost them both in an accident when I was only 2. I wanted some semblance of control in my life after living in the orphanage for over a decade, but I never thought I would have to deal with someone like Karen, who would quickly make my life a living nightmare. Karen was a divorcee and the mother of a single child, and she was also the epitome of entitlement and discrimination. She had always been rude to me since the day I moved in because I am Indian and I had an accent. It was like she had some sort of grudge against me for being different from her. She would make snide comments about my culture and the way I spoke, and even accused me of getting into the country illegally. It was clear that Karen was a racist POS and I was her target. And by the way, Ripe stars, as you might have noticed, I have censored some info here because, to be honest, OP provided too much information about where he lives and I don't really want to dox him. Suffice to say, the country he is in currently is kind of well known for being quite corrupt, and especially having a fairly corrupt legal system and police force. And yes, it is not America. However, it was not just about my race. Karen was also jealous of my house, which was one of the nicest in the neighborhood. She'd constantly ask me how much I paid for it and then tell me that she could offer me a better price. When I told her that I was not interested in selling, she would become angry and start making threats. As if she expected me, someone she constantly bullied and harassed, to happily give up my new property to her. Karen's entitlement was truly unbelievable. She felt that because she was white, she deserved to have anything she wanted, including my house. She would make demands and then get angry when I refused to comply. Karen started harassing me on a daily basis. She would yell at me from her window, telling me to go back to where I came from, hurling racial comments in my direction. She was a racist through and through and even seemed to be proud of it. She even went so far as to write me death threats through the mail, but I still refused to sell. I was at my wit's end. I could not believe that somebody could be so cruel and hateful towards another person. But I refused to give in to her demands. I loved my house that I had worked so hard to afford, and I was not gonna let Karen bully me out of it, even when Karen's behavior was a constant source of stress and fear for me. It was exhausting to constantly be on guard and worry about what she might do next. It seemed like she had a problem with anyone who did not fit into her idea of what a neighbor should be. I was not the only one who had problems with Karen. Several of my neighbors had also experienced her bullying behavior. Some had even moved away because they could not take it anymore, but even with all of the complaints against her, Karen refused to change her ways. She seemed to relish in causing trouble and making people's lives miserable. I remember one instance where Karen threw a fit when a black family moved in next door to her. She made several derogatory comments about them and even called the police on them for no reason. It was clear that she was trying to intimidate them and push them out of the neighborhood. But Karen's entitlement did not stop there. She had a habit of parking her car in the middle of the street, blocking traffic and causing a hazard for other drivers. She would also let her dog run loose, terrorizing other pets in the area, and she was not shy about letting her opinions be known. She'd often yell at other neighbors who did not agree with her and would make a scene if things did not go her way. But it was her treatment towards me that was the most unbearable. Karen seemed to take pleasure in making my life difficult. She would often leave notes in my mailbox telling me that I did not belong in the neighborhood and that I should go back to where I came from. One day though, I came home to find my front yard covered in trash. Karen had dumped her garbage all over my property, and it was clear that it was meant to send me a message. She even had the audacity to knock on my door and demand that I clean it up. Karen would also make noises late at night just to disturb my sleep. She'd park her car in front of my driveway, making it difficult for me to get in and out. And one day, Karen decided to take her harassment to a next level. She started calling my workplace, pretending to be a customer, and making false complaints about me. It was a blatant attempt to get me fired. Luckily though, my employer saw through her lies, but it was a stressful and humiliating experience, especially since I was one of the youngest people in the team. Despite all of Karen's efforts, I refused to give in to her demands. I loved my house and my community, and I was not going to let her push me out of it either. Despite the constant fear and anxiety that Karen's behavior had caused me, I refused to give in to her demands. I continued to make repairs to my property and took extra precautions to protect it from further damage. However, there was something else too. I feel a little shy saying this, but I was in love with Karen's daughter. EE was my age, a kind, gentle soul who had been trapped under her mother's abusive and controlling grip her entire life. I knew Karen would never approve or allow our relationship, so I never made a move, but in my heart I knew I loved that sweet girl and I wanted to help her. Because even though Karen was horrible towards me, she was downright cruel to her daughter and treated her like a maid. Really, Karen's behavior towards her daughter was just despicable. She would belittle her, control her every move, and make her feel like she was nothing without her. E was never allowed to make her own decisions or follow her own dreams. It was as if she was a prisoner in her own home. So while I was dealing with the entitlement and racism of Karen, E was dealing with everything else. Also, Karen's behavior towards me was not only limited to racism and harassment, but also destroying my property in order to devalue it and force me to sell it to her. It started with little things like pulling out my flowers. At first I thought it was just some kids playing stupid pranks, but then I noticed it was happening more frequently and always at times when Karen was around. One day though, I came home to find that Karen had painted graffiti on the side of my house. The offensive message was a clear attempt to bring down the value of my home and make it unsellable. It was shocking to see how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. But Karen's destruction did not stop there. She would often park her car on my lawn, causing tire tracks and ruining my grass. She also had a habit of throwing trash into my place, including broken glass and other dangerous objects. It was like she was trying to make my property as unappealing as possible. One time I came home to find that Karen had dumped a bucket of paint all over my bicycle. The paint had completely ruined the exterior, and it was clear that the damage was intentional. I felt violated that someone would do something like this to me, but another time I woke up to find that Karen had set fire to my front porch. Fortunately, the fire department was able to put out the flames quickly, but the damage was extensive. The fire had destroyed my porch and had caused smoke damage throughout my home. I could not believe that Karen would stoop to such a low level to get me to sell my house. Karen's destructive behavior was not limited to my property, however. She would also often mess with other parts of the neighborhood as well. She would dump her dog's poop on the sides of the road, tear down for sale signs, and even spray paint offensive messages on other people's homes. It was clear that Karen's behavior was a nuisance to everyone in the neighborhood. People were too afraid to confront her, and it seemed like she had everyone under her thumb. Her entitled toxic behavior was the cause of so much stress and anxiety for everyone around her, and it was clear that something needed to be done. The worst incident happened when I went on vacation for a week. When I returned, I found that Karen had broken into my house and vandalized it. She had smashed windows, torn up furniture, and even painted offensive messages on my walls. It was clear that she wanted me out of the neighborhood at any cost, and unfortunately there was little I could do. Where today it's easy to record a person and have them blasted on the internet in hopes of getting some kind of justice, back then you could only hope that the police would not beat you up for bothering them with so-called small inconveniences. Anyways, Karen's behavior towards me and my property continued to escalate, and it was clear that she would stop at nothing to get me to sell my home. It seemed like every day there was a new instance of her destroying or messing with my property, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep up with the damage, and it all came to a head that day. The day started out just like any other. I went to work, ran some errands, and then returned home. However, as I turned onto my street, I noticed something strange. My mailbox was missing. At first I thought maybe it had fallen over or been hit by a car, but as I got closer I could see that it had been completely destroyed. It was as if someone had taken a bulldozer to it. I was in shock. Who would do something like this, and why? I went to my neighbor's house to see if they had seen anything, and that's when I heard the news. Karen had done it. Karen had been bragging about destroying my mailbox and making it clear that she was behind it. Apparently, she had been so angry that I refused to sell her my house that she decided to take matters into her own hands. She used the bulldozer to destroy my mailbox just to teach me a lesson and make me fear her. And honestly speaking, I was not even shocked that she would go to such length just to get her way. She was that crazy. It was a clear attempt to intimidate me and make me fear her. After the incident with my mailbox, I knew I had to confront Karen and put an end to her destructive behavior once and for all. I was tired of living in fear and knew that I had to stand up to her. So then I went to Karen's house and knocked on her door. When she opened it, she had a smug look on her face like she had been expecting me. "What do you want?" she sneered, crossing her arms over her chest. I took a deep breath and said, "Karen, I know that you're the one who destroyed my mailbox. I want to know why you would do something like that." Karen just shrugged and said, "Because I can. If you have a problem with it, move away and hand over that house to me. It's not like anyone will pay good for it now anyway." I could not believe that she would say something like that to my face. But Karen was not finished. She continued, "You know, you can try to report me to the police or whatever, but they're on my side. I'm Karen and you're just an outsider, a brown-skinned leech who doesn't belong here. They'll never take your side over mine." I was outraged. Karen's words made me feel helpless and powerless. But I knew that I couldn't let her get away with her behavior. "I won't stand for this, Karen," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I will do whatever it takes to protect my property and I will not be handing it over to someone like you." Karen just laughed and slammed the door in my face. I was left to deal with the aftermath. I had to replace my mailbox and repair the damage to my property. But even more than that, I had to deal with the fear that Karen had instilled in me, but I was not going to give up. I knew that I had to fight back and take action to stop her destructive behavior once and for all. I contacted the police again and reported Karen's behavior. This time I made sure to document everything, from her destruction of my property to her racist remarks. To my surprise, the police took my report seriously and began an investigation. Karen's destruction of my mailbox may have seemed like a small act of vandalism, but it ended up having big consequences for her. As it turned out, destroying mailboxes is a federal offense that can result in significant fines and even jail time. Karen was now facing serious charges and the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence. The trial was a long and arduous process, but in the end, Karen was found guilty and sentenced to several years in prison. Her actions had finally caught up with her and she was forced to pay the price for her destructive behavior. Karen's reign of terror was finally over and now both E and I could live in peace. However, E was still afraid because now she was left all alone on her own and there was no guarantee that her mother would not just come back and punish her for living with me, an Indian. It was while we were contemplating our future when we received a call. It was Karen's husband, who we had not heard from in years. He had lost custody of his daughter to Karen in the divorce and had been fighting for years to get her back. As we agreed to meet him and talk to him, we learned more about why Karen had been so intent on keeping her husband away from her daughter. It turned out that she had been using her daughter as a tool to extract as much child support as possible from her ex-husband. She had been taking the money and spending it on herself rather than on their daughter's needs. It was a selfish and despicable act, but it was also unfortunately all too common in situations like this. Karen's ex-husband was furious when he learned about what had been going on. He had always known that Karen was a terrible mother, but had never been able to prove it in court. However, now that Karen was behind bars, he finally had a chance to see his daughter again and evidence to fight for custody. He worked with us to get a restraining order against Karen, which made sure that she could not come anywhere near us. He also made sure that he had full custody of their daughter so that Karen could not use her as a pawn in her games anymore. It was a long and difficult process, but we finally felt like we had closure on the situation. Karen was now behind bars, her ex-husband had custody of their daughter, and he also gave us his blessings to finally start a life together. We were overjoyed to hear from him and to know that he was finally able to see his daughter again. As for us, we were finally able to start a new life together, free from Karen's abuse and harassment. E and I were grateful for her father's help and support, and we knew that we could not have done it without him. He was a good man and a great father who had been through a lot. Now, years later, he is still a great father, but he's also the greatest grandfather who loves looking after his granddaughter so that we can have some time to ourselves. Our little family is still not perfect. We all carry scars from the past because even though Karen is no longer a threat to us, we still have to deal with the aftermath of her harassment and abuse. It had been a long and difficult road, but we are determined to overcome it. And the life we have built now is 1,000,000 times better than before. My wife still sometimes asks me that if I can go back and get away from Karen, would I do it? And every time my answer is the same. I could face 1,000 Karens and 100 Susans if it meant that in the end I can be with you, my wife. And indeed, Ripe Stars, I am very happy for this ending, that it all turned out well in the end, even though I feel like OP should have stood up to Karen way earlier. However, it's good to hear that Karen finally ended up in prison and OP and Karen's daughter are now leading a wonderful, happy life. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is titled Walk of Shame. From a good friend who lives in South America, not my story, hers. This happened about 16 years ago. My friend, let's call her Maria, had been dating a guy called Oscar for 2.5 years or so when she found out on the grapevine, if you live in a small town you'll understand, that Oscar had betrayed her. He had been to a party, got a girl drunk and slept with her. News of his actions had spread as gossip does. The worst of it was that it seemed that it wasn't the first time that it had happened by a long shot. Well, anyway, Maria heard and plotted revenge. She invited him to her flat for a special afternoon of fun with her and her friend Vanessa. Oscar could not resist the temptation, so he went. Picture the scene. He goes into the building where she lives, gets into the lift to go up to the 10th floor to get to her apartment. He rings the bell, he can hear music playing from behind the door, she opens the door and he walks in and sees that both his girlfriend Maria and her friend Vanessa are there, each wearing sexy outfits. Maria is holding a blindfold and tells him to wear it, he agrees and she puts it on him and tells him to strip. While he was busy, Vanessa put her clothes back on, walked out the apartment, leaving a doorstop to keep the door open, and called the lift. That's an elevator to you Americans. She then walked back in, grabbed Oscar's clothes and threw them out the window into the car park below. She then left the apartment and went down the stairs, ringing doorbells as she descended. Maria had been leading Oscar around the apartment, disorientating him, and then let him out the apartment, closed the door behind her and got in the lift alone, calling him an unfaithful a-hole whose clothes are in the car park before the lift doors closed. Oscar ripped off the blindfold and must have realized how screwed he was, as he had to walk down 10 flights of stairs buck naked, passing laughing neighbors all the way. He collected his clothes and Maria never saw him again. Added for clarity, Maria went on the lift alone and held it open on the ground floor. Neighbors on the 10th floor had come out to see Oscar, setting him to walk down the stairs, thereby making it worse as Vanessa was going down the stairs, alerting as many people as possible. Also, people followed him outside, so he had to dress with an audience. The humiliation was intense. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I don't know if you remember that scene, but it kind of reminds me of the Walk of Shame in Game of Thrones. However, I'm not sure which one was more embarrassing. And the next one is titled Cannot Replace Me. I worked for a company for just under 5 years. The company I worked for existed for an additional 10 years prior to me, and while I worked at this company, it ballooned to be the #1 provider in the region for its unique service with about 75% of the market. It was a small business of about 15 employees. I loved my job and the skills I learned while working there were quite valuable. I loved my team and the clients we provided services for. My twice-yearly reviews with the owner were always 10 out of 10 with no recommendations for improvement. I was exceptional at my job. I handled company operations, HR and payroll, customer service, marketing, employee management, schedules, employee and client training, and many other things at this company. I was also able to step in and do any of my teammates' jobs if they were out sick or on vacation. The owner of the company was giving out a bonus late summer last year, and mine, while being more than the previous year, was notably less than my teammates. I asked the owner, are the bonuses related to performance? And if so, what could I have done to earn more? The owner replied, the bonuses are not performance related, you are just more replaceable than the others. "Oh, okay," I replied and proceeded to process each of the bonuses and then went to lunch. I called my spouse to gain wisdom and advice. I was pretty lit but did not want to make a rash decision. My spouse is very intelligent, and while they are not a fortune teller, they have an ability to foresee various responses and all the potential outcomes. They are business-wise and have been on the executive team of a large company for the past 21 years, while also serving on several community boards and business advisory boards. We decided together to continue forward with our scheduled vacation and use the time away to calm our minds, relax and have fun. And to also determine the best course of action for me. We were leaving after working one more day, so I worked like all was normal the rest of the day and the following day, and then left on vacation. While away, we discussed several scenarios, the potential outcomes, consulted with a business advisor and a business attorney. With all the advice I received, I determined that upon my return from vacation, I would resign from my role with a 2-week notice. However, in a fit of rage, I was immediately terminated by the owner. Which was one of the scenarios we thought would happen, so I was prepared for the owner's poor reaction. During the next couple weeks, I created and opened a competing business offering similar services. However, I offered more customizable options with higher quality service and results. I knew our clients wanted these options and had proposed said options several times at the old workplace, but they were never greenlighted to implement the changes for no reason other than the owner did not come up with the idea, so clearly it was a stupid idea. I also maintained communications with a few people from my old team. My old team did not relay the day-to-day happenings at my previous workplace, and I never asked about the company. However, they would vent to me on occasion. I would listen without comment. I knew service quality and the work environment in general suffered since my departure. Morale went down and clients were less satisfied. I also read the Google and Facebook reviews for the old company, and yikes. Additionally, 2 full-time and 1 part-time people were hired to fill my role, and a portion of my responsibilities like HR and payroll were filled by outside companies. I quickly built up my business and within 3 months was able to hire several of my old teammates. They were able to jump in on day 1 with minimal training as they were the best employees at my old workplace. The quality of previous workplace offerings continued to fall, which sent additional business my way and quickly caused incoming work to be non-existent at the old workplace. My old workplace went from being the #1 provider of unique service in the region to nothing in a matter of months. My previous employer is now searching for gainful employment. I know this because over the weekend, owner applied for a position at my spouse's company. Side note, I think my spouse's company should bring my previous employer in for an interview, but when they arrive, surprise, I'm the interviewer and all I say is, how replaceable am I now? My spouse, rightfully so, has said no. Moral of the story, don't tell your employees they are replaceable because they might create a competing business that is better than yours while taking your best employees and your clients, which will leave you with no business to sell. The owner's whole retirement plan was to sell the business and starting all over by searching for employment under someone else. Looks like your company was replaceable, but not me. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that was absolutely brilliant revenge and nobody could have done it better than this guy, I think. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.